There is something that is exciting in getting a quick win in the game of chess. Well, hello there. This is Vitriol's the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. And earlier in the year, I published this book, 50+2 Chess Quick Wins, Tactical Ideas for Exciting Chess for Beginner Players, available on Amazon. Don't miss out on your copy. This is the third video in the series where I cover the opening section of my book, where I describe and explain some of the tactical ideas, themes and motifs which underlie many quick win games. Now in today's video, I'm going to discuss a tactical theme that I call the bishop plus queen f pawn attack. And this tactical idea is something that sort of comes out of the learnings we might have in the very first video in the series, where we looked at the fool's mate and also the scholar's mate. So two of the generalizable ideas that came out of the fool's mate and the scholar's mate is firstly that the f pawn is uniquely weak at the beginning of the game, and also that if the queen captures the f pawn, there is a potential mating pattern. Now, let's have a look at what we actually even mean by the f pawn being weak. So what do we mean by that? Look, so here we've got a chessboard. Just to make it simple, only put sort of one white king. So we just have a look at the black pieces, and we can see, if we think about at the beginning of the game, how are these pawns defended? What defends those pawns? So, the rook defends that pawn, the knight defends that pawn, bishop, queen, king, bishop, knight, and rook. And if I color code this, I'm just going to move one square. The center two pawns, so that's the d pawn and the e pawn, are particularly well defended, so defended by multiple pieces, and I've color coded them blue. With these other pawns, they're defended by one non-king piece, so rook, knight, bishop, etc. However, notice the f pawn. When we say the f pawn is uniquely weak, it's because it is only defended by the king. And the reason why this is important is that the king is not a good defender of a pawn, or of any piece. And partly that's because the king has some specific restrictions. You cannot sacrifice the king. The king cannot go into a square where it's under check. Moving the king has consequences towards the middle game. For instance, you won't be able to castle, potentially the king gets exposed, and of course the win state of chess is checkmate, where the king is under attack and cannot move out of attack. So there's lots of reasons why we don't want to move the king. The king is not a good defender, and that is what we mean by the f pawn being uniquely weak. It's not defended by any other piece. Now, the particular bishop plus queen tactical pattern here, again, let's simplify things. We'll just have the king here, the opponent's king, so this is from white's perspective. The bishop and the queen here in a battery, looking potentially at the f7 square, so potentially the f pawn might be there. This is checkmate, and this pattern is checkmate because consider the king is now under attack by the queen. However, geometrically, the king cannot capture the queen because it's defended by the bishop, so the f square is attacked twice. The king also is trapped. The queen commands the entire 7th rank here. The king cannot move to this square because the queen is in their own queen is in that location. And of course, very often in the opening, in the beginning series of moves, the queen often hasn't moved. It's often not good to move the queen early. And so the king is trapped. It has nowhere to move. It cannot attack and capture the checking piece. And so this pattern is mate. Now, why the bishop? Well, the bishop has a potentially a unique advantage here. Firstly, for the opponent's Fpawn, it's going to be our king's bishop. And if you remember the scholar's mate, the king's bishop potentially can be in position to attack that Fpawn as early as the second move. Another important psychological consideration is that for white's perspective, it's a c4 square, but if it's black, it'll be bishop to c5. This is actually the natural developing square for the king's bishop in a number of different openings. And what that means is that the opponent may become relatively complacent about the location of that bishop, insofar that they won't be sensitized to the idea that that bishop is providing or is causing a threat on their f7 pawn, simply because the bishop is often there anyway. Now, let's have a look at this in action and remind ourselves about this pattern, so viewing it from the perspective of this pattern with the scholar's mate, which we've seen before in the first video. So here we go. So if we remember, in the scholar's mate, we start with, hold on, no, sorry, got the wrong one, here we go. So the scholar's mate, we start with e4. Opponent plays e5, and now bishop to c4. So remember, the bishop can potentially be attacking the f-pawn from as early as move 2. Now let's keep an eye on the pieces, so the bishop and the queen, with an attack on the f-pawn. In this game, black develops a knight. We still have vision on that f-pawn, and of course in the scholar's mate, we bring the queen out. Now the two pieces attacking that weak f-pawn. Black blunders by sort of ignoring that threat, and now queen captures. King cannot capture the queen because it's also defended by the bishop, or our queen and bishop are both attacking the same square, the f7 square. The king can't escape, it can't move to, its only potential escape square is e7, that's covered by our bishop, it's trapped, and so it's mate. So that's sort of thinking about the scholar's mate from the perspective of this tactical pattern. So bishop attacking, queen attacking, and now mate. Now let's look at this from another game, slightly more complicated, now this time from the perspective of black. Now in this game, white actually tries to play something called the Napoleon attack, which is kind of like a weaker, not so good version of the wayward queen. So e4, e5, and here we go, white is trying, a scholar's mate type idea that occurs also in the Napoleon attack. So queen attacking our f-pawn. We develop a knight, there we go, the bishop attacking our f-pawn, so there's a mate threat there. And in this game, we can just nerf this attack by bringing out the queen. And why might we want to do that? Well, if queen captures queen, we get to capture back the queen with development, and we win effectively a bit of tempo. This is one of the reasons why the Napoleon attack is not good. Now, also by bringing our queen out, our black queen, has a potential attack on on white's f-pawn, on f2. In this game, white decides to move their queen. And now this is a mistake because now we've got knight forward attacking the queen. It also simultaneously attacks the c2 pawn. And so here the best move for white is to move their queen all the way back to its starting square to defend the c pawn. But notice now, once again, with the queen having moved back to its starting square, the king doesn't have an escape on the back rank, and the f-pawn is now only defended by the king. The white's f-pawn is not defended by any other piece. Here, we now develop our bishop to its natural developing square. Now potentially our queen and bishop are both potentially looking at that f-pawn. We don't have a mating attack right away, but they're both looking at that pawn. White develops a knight, we capture the knight, and they take back with a pawn. Again, that's a mistake because that f-pawn is not developed. It would have been better for them to capture with their queen, potentially inviting a trade. Here, I now move the queen to h4. Bishop, queen, both looking at that f-pawn, which is still weak. King is the only defender. In this game, basically white needs to add a defender to that weak pawn, and that might be by moving the queen, their white queen, to the e2 square, maybe the rook to that square, or they could potentially block one of the pieces, for example, with d4, which then blocks my bishop's blocks that diagonal and the ability for my bishop to be attacking that piece. So they're all possibilities. They miss that. They push a random pawn, and so of course, queen captures the f-pawn, queen on f2 with check. King cannot capture the queen because it's also defended by the bishop, two attackers on that f2 square. King cannot move anywhere else. It's mate. Let's look at yet another game, this time back from White's perspective. In this game, it starts with an Italian. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. So very, very normal. This is a normal Italian. The bishop is looking at that f-pawn. Now in this game, black plays a somewhat slow opening with the anti-fried liver defense with g6. And here, what I can do is immediately take the center. Now watch what happens, still looking at that f-pawn. Captures, 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 captures. We now have a semi-open d-file. The white queen has developed into the center of the board. It's very, very powerful potentially. Black here now makes a mistake, a serious blunder, by playing b6. Now what black was probably thinking of was, if the queen was still there, they're going to attack the queen with pawns. However, this was a blunder because I now have queen d5. Bishop, queen in a battery looking at the f-pawn. F-pawn is uniquely weak at the beginning, only defended by the king. Nothing else is defending it. But also I have a fork of black's rook on a8. This was a blunder because they opened up that light square diagonal. Here, black needs to defend that pawn. And they could potentially do that with queen potentially to e7, or maybe queen to f6. They miss that. They try to attack the queen with a pawn, defending their rook, missing that weak f-pawn. Queen captures the f-pawn. King cannot take the queen, defended by the bishop, or the queen and the bishop both attack that f7 square. King is trapped, no escape squares, mate. Now this particular tactical pattern is potentially available, as I said, in many different openings. Now we've, people may think of the scholar's mate or the wayward queen attack as easy to, sidestep and diffuse, and that is true. This tactical pattern, however, is more general than those specific lines. In fact, you can think of the scholar's mate as a very specific implementation of this general tactical pattern. Recognizing this tactical pattern will allow you to see opportunities in other games, in other openings, and potentially get a quick win. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.